On the morning of December 15th, 2017, Elise Stern, who was a highly experienced real estate agent and a close personal friend of the Sherman family, was preparing to show their large house to a couple of potential buyers and the professional representative who was accompanying them. Even though the Shermans had not answered any of her most recent phone calls, Elise decided to go ahead with the scheduled showing anyway. Located at the very back of the house was a large outdoor swimming pool, which was completely closed at the time since it was not currently the swimming season yet. Farther back, in the same yard, there was a tennis court surrounded by a fence. In a basement beneath the tennis court, there was another pool that was rarely used. The day before, a Toronto magazine in Canada had published that the house was up for sale. The price was $6,900,000. On that specific day of December 15th, there were four different individuals moving throughout the Sherman house, along with two others who arrived at 8:30 in the morning to perform their routine cleaning and water the indoor plants, just as they did every single week. The only strange thing one of these people found, the woman responsible for the cleaning, was the sound of a cell phone ringing in one of the couple's bathrooms. Other than that, the day went on for everyone for a while longer, as if everything were normal. The couple of potential buyers wandered through different rooms of the house until Elise took them to the room with the pool, which was located on the lower floor. As she walked inside, still talking enthusiastically about the house's high-end finishes and how truly beautiful it was, she looked toward the pool area and suddenly realized something was wrong. A cold chill ran down her spine, and she quickly moved the clients away so they wouldn't see the horrific scene. Elise had unfortunately found the lifeless bodies of her dear friends, the Sherman couple. Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we have a case that people are still talking about. It's about the mysterious deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman. This couple was among the 15 richest and most powerful people in all of Canada, with a fortune valued in the billions of dollars. Even to this day, the murder of these two people is still under investigation, and there are all kinds of rumors about who is responsible and why they did it. Up there, the one on the screen, you can see the rest of my cases. Down here, you have my social media in case you want to follow me on any of them. And with nothing more to say, let's get started. Bernard Charles Barry Sherman was born on February 25th, 1942, in Toronto, Canada. He was the only child of Herbert and Sarah Sherman. His family emigrated from Europe during World War II, since they were Jewish and were being persecuted. Barry had to face tough times at a really young age, since when he was 10 years old, his father died of a heart attack. This was a hard blow for Barry, but thanks to the support of his mother and his family, he was able to move forward. Barry was always described as a really intelligent and dedicated person. When he got to high school, he stood out as a real genius, especially in subjects like physics, math, and chemistry. He participated in and won several events like math Olympiads and physics competitions. His performance was so outstanding that he finished high school at the age of 15. And by the age of 16, he was already pursuing a degree in engineering at the University of Toronto, being recognized as one of the youngest ever students in the university's history. Barry's college career was truly incredible. He graduated in engineering after just a few years and then went on to earn all kinds of master's degrees and doctorates at the most prestigious universities in Canada and the United States. While Barry was making huge strides in his university career, his maternal uncle, Lewis Lloyd Winter, took him in and became a sort of father figure after Barry's father passed away. Lewis was the owner of a modest pharmaceutical company called Empire Laboratories, but it had great growth potential. Barry started out as a cadet, handling paperwork, making deliveries, and collecting samples. Meanwhile, little by little, he was learning about his uncle's industry and business. In 1965, tragic events occurred. Both Lewis, Barry's uncle, and his wife passed away within a span of 17 days. Lewis died of an aneurysm, and his wife of leukemia. Louis had 4 children: Paul, Jeffrey, Carrie, and Dana, who were very young when they were left orphaned. Unfortunately, none of them were old enough to inherit and take over their father's company. So the pharmaceutical company was managed by a trustee until 1967, when Barry bought the company that had belonged to his uncle. It's a bit more complicated than that, but we'll talk about this purchase and the agreement Barry signed later. The truth is that under his leadership, Empire Laboratories began to grow rapidly. So it was a surprise when Barry decided to sell it. This happened in 1969, just 2 years after he bought it. Even so, he stayed involved in the pharmaceutical industry, and in 1974, he founded his own generic drug company called Apotex. For those wondering what a generic drug company is, these are labs that produce various drugs in generic form, meaning they don't have a brand name. An example of this is sildenafil, a drug used to treat pulmonary arterial hypertension, which is popularly known as Viagra. But Viagra isn't the name of the drug, it's the brand from that lab. But before we continue with Barry's business career, let's go back a bit to his personal life. It was during his time at the University of Toronto that Barry met Honey. Anna Deborah Honey Ratch de Sherman was born in 1948 in Austria. She was the daughter of Holocaust survivors. For a long time, Barry and Honey were interested in each other, but Barry was a real workaholic, so it took them quite a while to start dating and become a couple. So in 1971, they finally got married. Together, they had 4 children: Jonathan, Lauren, Alexandra, and Caitlin. There isn't much information about what the Sherman family's private life was like. Everything that is known comes from their public appearances. It's no secret that the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most profitable and lucrative industries in the world. So when Apotex started operating and growing rapidly, it didn't stop until it became the #1 pharmaceutical company in Canada. This ended up cementing Barry's position as one of the richest and most powerful people in the country. Both of them, especially Honey, became philanthropists and donated to many causes, in addition to giving millions of dollars a year to various Jewish organizations. In fact, they were prominent members of the Jewish community in Canada. Being such an important figure in the country, and especially in a highly competitive industry like pharmaceuticals, Barry was surrounded throughout his life by legal disputes, political clashes, fierce competition with other pharmaceutical companies, rumors, lawsuits, and everything else you can imagine. To finish giving some context, months before the events, Barry and Honey were planning to move from their luxurious home to a less central area, farther from the city. Now, with this context in mind, let's move on to the day of the events. The last time Barry and Honey were seen alive was on December 13th, 2017. That day, Honey went to Barry's office at the company, and then they went home together. The last record of Barry is an email he sent to his employees that night. The next day, neither of them was seen. Barry didn't show up to work, which was extremely unusual for him since he practically lived at the office. And Honey also didn't show up for her charity commitments. As I mentioned before, on December 15th, 2017, Elise Stern, a friend of the Sherman couple and a real estate agent, was giving a tour to a couple of potential buyers. That was until she reached the indoor pool and realized that the Shermans were there, lifeless. Instead of calling the police right away, she first made an excuse and led the clients out of the house, trying not to alarm them. She also calmed them down because they weren't too happy about leaving so early. After that task was finally completed, she reached out to the cleaning lady to go over and verify if what she had seen was real. The woman went down to the indoor pool area and came back in a state of total shock, frantically saying that they absolutely needed to call the police immediately. the Shermans were discovered lying right next to the pool with men's leather belts fastened tightly around their necks. Stern also had another co-worker who hadn't gone to the house that day. She called her before contacting the police. Her coworker told her to call emergency services right away, and on her own, she decided to alert the Shermans' children one by one about what they had found in the house. They immediately cordoned off the crime scene to prevent further contamination and began collecting all possible evidence. The position in which the bodies were found was quite strange. Barry appeared to be sitting on the edge of the pool with his legs crossed, while Honey was lying next to him. There didn't seem to be any evidence of a third party involved. They didn't find any fingerprints or DNA, nor were there any signs that someone had broken into the house. Unfortunately, the house didn't have any security cameras. Or rather, there were cameras, but they hadn't worked in years. Therefore, there was no kind of video that could show what happened. The autopsy results determined that the cause of death for both was asphyxiation with the belt each had around their neck. After these initial investigations, the police began to consider the hypothesis that it could have been a double suicide or a murder-suicide, since they couldn't find any evidence of another person being involved. When they heard these theories, Barry and Honey's children flatly denied the possibility that their parents had committed suicide or that one had killed the other and then taken their own life. That's why they insisted on having a second autopsy performed. This second autopsy confirmed that both Barry and Honey had been murdered. In other words, neither of them took their own life. As we mentioned at the beginning, the case is still under investigation, so most of these inquiries have not been made public. In addition to the state investigators, that is, the police, Barry and Honey's children hired private investigators. The truth is, there doesn't seem to have been much progress in the investigation over the past 6 years, and the question of who the killer might have been is far from being resolved. Before moving on to the theories or hypotheses about the case, there's a new detail that came up 2 years after the events. In May 2019, an urban explorer entered the Shermans' house before it was demolished. He waited for just the right moment to do it, since before the house was demolished, the security cameras had been removed, and with no one able to catch him, he could enter the house whenever he wanted. He went through closets, photos, papers, and files, some of which seemed to him like potential evidence related to the case. This person documented their findings through photos and videos showing various items, including a box of medications, furniture, and keepsakes. Just 2 days after his final visit, the entire house was completely demolished. The explorer remained anonymous after this out of fear due to the importance of the case, and supposedly never published the photos. According to some reports, he had, at the very least, posted the story on his Reddit profile. But beyond that, there isn't any other public information available. That's all I know. I couldn't find any more information about who this person is or what exactly they discovered. Later on, the house was finally demolished. But all of these fascinating details eventually bring us around to the theories. At first, these are divided into two. One is that both were murdered, and then there's the murder-suicide theory. More specifically, that Barry killed his wife and then took his own life. The most likely theory, or the one they're investigating, is the first one, that both were murdered, since one of the autopsies reported this. But the number of possibilities this theory opens up is endless. Being such a powerful and well-known figure, Barry could have had enemies or people interested in ending his life everywhere, from former employees to competitors within the pharmaceutical industry. Literally, there are hundreds of people who would have benefited from Barry's death. Based on how things happened, there's a hypothesis that the killer, possibly more than one person, was someone Barry and Honey knew, since there were no signs of forced entry into the house. Let's also remember that there were cameras on the property. The thing is, they weren't working, and that's something someone who knows them and has been inside would be aware of. That's when the possibility comes up that the killer could be a relative of Barry or Honey. And so we have to talk about Barry's cousins. If we think back a bit, remember that at one point, Barry's uncle, who had given him a job at his company, along with his wife, passed away. And sometime later, Barry ended up buying the company. Well, it turns out that in the contract Barry signed to buy it, it was stipulated that each of Lewis's children would get 5% of the company. Remembering that Lewis had 4 children, this meant that 20% would go to them, but several conditions had to be met for this to happen. One of these conditions was that they had to be of legal age, and at that time, none of them were 18 yet. You might also remember that 2 years after buying it, right when it was booming, Barry suddenly sold it. By doing this, he avoided having to give each of his cousins their share. Plus, none of them knew anything about this. As the years went by, none of these cousins knew about the contract Barry had signed. Most of them lost contact with their cousin, and several later struggled with addiction in their adult lives. There's a documentary where the main character is Kerry Winter, son of Louie and Barry's cousin, where he told all of this in detail and from his own perspective. To give a general overview of the story, Kerry says that after the company was sold, Barry lost contact with all his cousins. Later, as an adult, Kerry struggled with drug addiction. One of his sisters did too. After many years without any contact with Barry, out of nowhere, he suddenly reappeared in their lives. They went from not seeing each other for years to Barry suddenly showing a lot of interest in them, especially in helping them financially. The help Barry was offering started to seem a bit suspicious to them. We're talking about millions of dollars that Barry was giving to his cousins, most of it so that each cousin could start their own business. These businesses didn't work out and ended up losing millions of dollars as well. Still, Barry was determined to keep helping them. From Kerry's point of view, all of this was a strategy by Barry to keep everyone under his control and prevent them from finding out about the contract Barry had signed when he bought his father's company. Eventually, Kerry and her siblings found out about this contract and took Barry to court, since they believed they had been swindled. The trial ended up being resolved in Barry's favor, and not only did the cousins lose the case itself, but they also had to pay Barry nearly $1 million. So once again, 2 perspectives emerge here. One is that Barry's cousins were involved in the murder as an act of revenge. And then there's the theory put forward by Kerry herself that Barry killed his own wife. Kerry says that on more than one occasion, Barry told her he couldn't stand his wife and wanted to kill her. She even says that Barry once told her, "I'm sure you know someone who would kill her for money. Find them for me," to which Kerry flatly refused. But as we said, all of this is just hypotheses, theories. We're still far from having the case solved. Besides, for obvious reasons, you can't really trust everything Barry's relatives say either. 3 years after the murders, the police revealed that there was a person of interest in the case. That is, a possible suspect for whom there isn't really enough evidence to charge, but they didn't reveal their identity out of fear of what might happen. They might try to flee or destroy evidence. This video is basically the only thing we have about a possible suspect and what they might look like. Really, the only thing you can determine from that video of a possible person involved in the crime is that they're taller than 1.70 meters. There's no skin color, no weight, no hairstyle, no color, no features. There's nothing. To make matters worse, this video, as you can see, was taken in the snow, and the person is wearing clothes that make them look even bulkier, so we really have no clue what this individual actually looks like. Also, after this video came out, a lot of people online said they didn't believe a single person could have done this. A lot of people think it was actually more than 2 people, but since the case is still under investigation, it's possible that more footage from cameras will come out at some point that could reveal some other useful information. But anyway, let me know what you think. If you already knew about this case and what your theories or hypotheses are about this topic. Was it one of his cousins? Maybe an argument between Barry and his wife? What could have happened? So that's the end of the video. Here are the Patreons and channel members. Thank you for supporting me through those platforms, and with nothing else to add, here's the new video, and here's a recommended video. You can subscribe by clicking on my face, and I'll see you in another video. Goodbye.